Fat Boys, we've been doing this long enough that it is not shocking for us at all if this last week were to come down to all matchups, all seedings would have just been hinging on every point. This year, not quite as much. We definitely had seeding up to it, but only really had a couple teams fighting for that last spot, and I'm pretty sure everyone else was clinched beforehand. So really it was who's going to take the top spot, who's going to put themselves in a better position seeding-wise, and then really came down to two people, which one is going to make the sixth spot. So now we know, but just in case you didn't know, talk a little football, then we'll get into what happened in Week 14. When it comes to Week 14, it's tricky because I know in NFL sense, the playoff run is really just getting started. And so as the fan of the sport in me, there's certain things I would talk about. For example, we keep talking about Chiefs in media and things like that and how they might technically still be mathematically in, but how Reed's kind of FU fourth down calls are a little bit ridiculous. And we could talk about analytics and how, yeah, sure, maybe it always makes sense to go on fourth down, but it does not factor in things like momentum. And I know you're not supposed to care about that, but at the same time, a fatigued defense and constantly repeatedly going at them, that does mean something. It also means something when your defense is actually more consistent or reliable than your offense. And I don't know how well that factors out. But even now, I'm probably boring you and you're thinking, I don't care about football. I care about my fantasy team. And in Week 14, that's where we're at, where it's really hard to be an NFL fan. You're kind of your own team's fan. And with that being said, I can't help but think of some of the knock-on effects. For example, if it's not a keeper league, most of them aren't, you might never draft Jalen Hurts again if you started him this week and you needed something from him. 2 turnovers in the same play is something you can't forget. And there is a significant chance that he cost people an actual playoff spot or a seeding spot this week. If you're looking at it that way, it's more of the grudges we bear and the things that we carry. Now, we already know now if you made the playoffs or didn't make the playoffs or what seed or spot you had. So it's kind of redundant to look back at Week 14. Even when I started looking at some of the statistics I wanted to look at or I would normally talk about, my head is already in the playoffs and what's happening this week. And if they're going to be repeated trends and patterns and what that says about us. For example, right now you have in the past couple weeks, Josh Allen and then Seattle's defense as probably the top 2 scorers consistently amongst all mediums. But what does that mean? Shedeur Sanders, I think, was the second highest starting quarterback. You going to trust him in your playoff game? Who do you really want to be in your first round playoff game? Even now, speaking to a bunch of people, there's a handful of people that are out and are going to be consolation. There's a couple people that got the bye. So in every league, there's only a handful of people that are actually playing this week. And you might have some of the more difficult decisions to go on. Do you want to go and try and get someone off the waiver wire? Or do you want to play like Justin Jefferson, who's done nothing for you all year, but kind of was your guy in the first round? Significant questions. I think also looking ahead, there's some really interesting matchups football-wise that are going to be huge for this week. Where do you sit on the AFC East? Do you think that most valuable player means the player who has the most value to your team? If so, Josh Allen's probably your guy. Or is it the best player on right now, one of the best teams? That'd be Drake May. And they're going to get after it this week, and it's going to be super entertaining. Do we care about history? You've got Goff and Stafford, and they're going to play each other again. And I mean, it's kind of like we're getting to that age, or I'm at that age, where some people's relationships have worked and some aren't. And when you have those co-parenting situations, like, are we just supposed to pretend that they didn't get traded for each other and like family swapped? And one of them won the Super Bowl or like moved on with an attractive other partner. And the other one is Goff. We just pretending he's happy with this? Is this going to be an FU game for him? Or is this going to be the Rams cementing themselves as the best offense? A lot of football questions, a lot of fantasy sports questions. Let's focus on the fantasy sports and get on to our league, though. Sometimes this league comes down to that last week when no one really knows, but weirdly enough, we had some people jockeying for positions, but most were set. It was just trying to figure out who's who and what the matchups would look like. Ben took it pretty serious, though, and maybe he peaked a little bit too early, or maybe this is a sign of things to come. Whalen kind of treated this like a 2-week bye. He knew he had the one, or was pretty sure, I think, and everyone got what they wanted out of this. I mean, Ben came out, and we're looking at QB3 in Burrow. We're looking at wide receiver 1 in Nakua. We're looking at running back 1 in Gibbs, and just looking at those 3, I'm going to tell you right now, nobody wants to play Ben in the playoffs. Now, then he also has Travis Wood, Kelsey. maybe people do want to play Ben in the playoffs. But then right now, who is actually his low-key all-stars? Seattle's defense, which has been dominant, and Dicker the kicker. That was a kicker 2, defense 4. Now, who was the defense 3? Let's take a quick gander down. Yeah, that was Philly. So it looks like he's stocking up on defenses and he's going to be matchup based. I don't know if he needs to. Seattle just might be the horse to get you through. Waylon, I'm not going to break your team down because honestly, you're doing quite well. You get lucky for you because Taylor is going against Seattle's defense next week. But that's why you got the bye, because you don't care. Stafford was a QB5. You get that week down. You're not sweating this one. Remember, the number 1 seed comes with a little bit of a benefit, so congratulations on that. And you get to go to the semis. Ben, if you're looking to intimidate people heading into your quarterfinal matchup, mission accomplished. Now, in a matchup that actually did mean a lot more, at least to one of the two, Jake, you knew you made the playoffs, but you were fighting for a spot. Underhill, you were fighting for your life, and dude, you were a top 2 seed for the first few weeks. This has been a rough stretch for you, and I think we know why. Injuries, inconsistencies. You were hoping for a little bit of empathy from Jake, but no, he yelled at you to do the math from one math teacher to another, and he put you down. And realistically, quarterback 1. I mean, that's what we're looking at on the year. That's what we're looking at, Jake. This is his guy. You can't really mess with it. He was the QB1 on the week. He also had the wide receiver 4. That's in Higgins, who's out next week. You also have the running back 5. Saquon finally earned his draft stock. All things considered, Jake is looking pretty good going into the playoffs. Now, he did also actually have a better defensive option on the bench. Can't blame him. You would have thought Cleveland against Tennessee. I believe I would have thought the same thing too, not just because I'm a Browns fan. On the flip side of that coin, Justin, you do have the kicker 1, so that's got to make you feel okay. But you had the wide receiver 2 on your bench. Do the math, though. It would not have made a huge difference. Sure, it would have been nice to have, but it didn't actually make the difference for you. You are in that bottom round. I'd like to talk to people a little bit about whether we want to make our consolation a little bit more competitive. I think we're the kind of league that should have a consequence for 10th. That's just me, but we'll get to that later. As for now, one made the playoffs, one didn't. Sorry, dude. In the battle for pride, Rathwell randomly comes out and has a phenomenal performance. Not hard to see why in the JSN. A little bit hard to see why in the Tony Pollard. JSN was the wide receiver 3. Pollard was the running back 2. So if you would have been playing, Mark, for something key, this would have been the week that you popped up and did something special. On the flip side of that coin, B, not surprising, you didn't have any of your people ring the top 5, although A.J. Brown has come along and Zay Flowers actually scored points. So that's cool. You didn't have a whole lot on the go. You did have some injury issues. I'm sorry to say, guys, there's just not a lot to say right now. Like I said, I think we need to have that conversation about what the basement means other than just competition here, because I want to keep the last couple weeks interesting for everybody. We don't have it yet, but I still think pride matters. I know you both enough to know that after the week off, you're still going to put in competitive rosters. Nobody wants to finish 10th. Let's see how that rolls out in a couple weeks. What I love about your horse is you're fighting to the bitter end. You knew you just had to win for pride's sake. You knew you wanted to show V that you're not rolling over in any stretch, and you got to play Hurts, so that's pretty good. Etienne was the running back 4. You did also have the kicker 5. Seattle's kicker sneakily has been actually last couple weeks a solid pickup. Horse, you might be just proving that point of maybe people are happy you didn't make the playoffs because you're kind of having that team that right now seems to be getting their legs underneath them. Just unfortunately for you, a few weeks too late. Will, if you're going to have a stinker, you might as well get it out of the way now. You got a top 2 seed, so you missed out on your chance to be the number 1 seed, but you didn't miss out on your chance to have a bye. So you do skip ahead straight to the semis. You get a chance to recover, rest, and hopefully Hurts just stops throwing interceptions to himself. This week meant a lot to Chaz, and he showed it. Now, this was a squeaker. I swear this was not me intentionally doing anything. I do feel bad sometimes when I set the draft time because I feel like Chaz and Mark are always targeted and they have to wake up crazy early, but I'm sorry, we stay up late. You know the compromise. This was not a makeup call. And we really did have it down to the wire. Now, you probably have noticed if you've been listening to this, I haven't said the word tight end at all, the 2 words. That's because Brock Bowers was actually the tight end 5, but he is the only tight end that anyone started in the top 5. So I guess our tight end 1. You also had the kicker 4 in Bates. I had nobody. I scored 98 points. Is that a shock? Now, I was only supposed to score 97. Apparently, my wide receivers don't like wide receiving, and I had, if we take a look, massive issues in the bye. Not massive, but injury plus 2 buys equals no bueno for me. My top scoring running back, well, I did have one on a flex, but it was actually the guy on IR. Now, I did just skip. I did have the defense too. I was just trying to be dramatic. I did make the playoffs. Chaz, so did you. We both have a game next round. Who knows? Maybe we bump into each other later. You can return the favor. Keep making reference to it. We know that only 4 teams out of our 10 are actually playing this week. Everybody else gets to rest and recover. Like I said, I'd love to have a conversation about consolation, but we'll do that maybe more next week. I'd love to put in some consequences there just because it'd be super fun. And we have videos now, just saying, there's possibilities. Anyway, onto our championship side. 6 has to come down to 4, so 4 of us are fighting for 2 spots. The 3 versus 6 just got spicy. I am recording this obviously after Thursday. Now, if you're going to go with Hot Lana, that means you're going to get benefit and you're going to get burnt. And Chaz, you got both, but I would take it. Mooney underperformed. Bijan came out a swinging, which means this one could be tight. On the flip side of this coin, I talked about Ben already. He's got some big horses. We know Nakua and Gibbs are 2 of the top offensive weapons. We got Burrow against Baltimore. Baltimore has not been able to do a whole lot defensively. On the flip side of the coin, we've got one of the only tight ends that's producing consistency. Achane could be running wild if healthy. But let's be completely honest. We got one team trusting teams like Philadelphia who've been awesome or horrible, and the Jets. We got the other people who are, hey, you know what? Love it. You're going with your guys. You're going Bears. Bears versus Jets. 3 versus 6. No idea how this is going to turn out. I have even less of an idea what's happening here, and I actually have some control over some of it. Now, in Jake's team, he's supposed to win. I'm not supposed to be competitive at all. He should walk with this one, and why not? He's got probably the most important player in his guy, Allen. Barkley, former offensive MVP. Houston against Arizona. You can't be upset about that one. Even on his bench in terms of options, I'm not trying to jinx you. You got Daniels who's out. You got Higgins who's out. So you are struggling with it. Now, Blake Corum, I didn't mention because I didn't want to rub it in. He was actually the running back 3. Could be an interesting matchup there. I understand why you wouldn't play him, but don't lie to me. You're thinking about it. And definitely you are looking for some strange, but against the Jets, that might just work out. For me, if this was week 2, I would be pumped because that was back when Ekbuka and Warren were doing stuff. Now they're not, but realistically, my biggest problem is now we have too much health in my running backs, and I have 2 people that probably are going to split carries. I haven't made up my final mind about Travion and Judkins yet. I wouldn't be shocked if my running backs were all mixed up and I made some other decisions, but I just know with the way things are going, I'm probably going to make the wrong decision. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Fat Boys, week 15 is always a weird one because you think it's all hype and it's playoff time, but it's only playoff time for 4 people. 2 others are waiting to see what happens. 4 others are kind of bitter and just kind of getting over it before they get in their consolation bracket. As I keep saying, I'd love to talk about what that means, but we don't have that for this year. So for right now, there's 4 of us kicking. 4 of us are paying attention to week 15, but only 2 of us that are going to be happy on Monday. I'd say best of luck to everybody except for Jake. That just sounds petty, though. So best of luck to everybody. Except for Jake.